happened to me in my divorce was my self-esteem was so low. I mean, I didn't believe in myself. I didn't think that I could do anything good. My marriage, I considered it was a failure. The kids were, acting up because they didn't know what to do. I mean, what can people do to help keep that self-esteem up, especially during the time of the divorce itself?
Well, when you're feeling really low about yourself and all these negative things, one important thing that I say to people, what would you tell a good friend who said all that to you? You'd probably be very supportive and mention all of the good points, all of the strong points. You're a wonderful mother, you're a great father, you're really terrific at your job, you're a good friend. Think of all the positive qualities that you still have.
People have a tendency not to be kind to themselves. They have a
Right.
tendency to be so hard on themselves, and even when they know it's not their fault, they still have all of this blame, and I think that that's hard on their self-esteem, and so, we just need to keep going forward with it.
And keep telling yourself over and over again the positive things about yourself, the positive things that other people say about you. It's also important to know that when you start to focus on the things that your mate really didn't like about you, is to try to think that, do I really want to be like that anyway? Sometimes you really don't even want to be the kind of person that your mate wants you to be.
And what do you do?
Well, you have to realize that it's no longer a good match, that it just stopped working, that in order for you to be the kind of person your mate wanted you to be, if you'd have to be a type of person you didn't like, then what's the point? There really is nothing wrong with you. You are you. Your spouse is who your spouse is. And again, it's important not to blame either one, for either one to feel like you're failures. It's just, the people that you are, and to look at the good qualities and the things about yourself that other people value.
Is there something that we can do to help the children with their self-esteem? Because they're really feeling left. They're really feeling that that parent didn't love them. I mean, and the parents aren't talking to them, so they don't know that. Is there something that we can tell the people that they can help their children with? Because this is really an important issue.
That's a very important issue. You just said something about parents not talking to the kids. Well, it is important to talk to them. But to try to take a very neutral stance, that none of this happened because of the kids, because they didn't do their homework, because the parents fight about the kids. That happens in all families. That's never the reason for divorce, and kids need to know that. Kids need to know that they're really just part of this family, and the family will still continue, and they'll still have two parents, even though the two parents don't live together. Kids need a lot of reassurance through all of this, and to know that you'll both still be there. The best thing you can do for your kids is to not be angry at your ex-spouse.
Margie, along the lines of self-esteem, what is it that we can do to boost ourselves so that we can keep ourselves up there?
Well, one of the best things is get out there and have some fun. Think about the things that you want to do. Try something new. Try a new sport, try a book club, do various kinds of things that are going to nourish you, that something's going to give back to you and help you grow and just blossom. And basically just play, be lighthearted, and give yourself permission to have fun. You've been through a rough time, you're still going through a rough time. You need to lighten up. I don't mean to be trite, but your problems will always be there. The issues you need to think about, I'm sure you're going to be working very hard thinking about them. We're certainly talking about them now. But mixed up in this is also looking for other things to do, finding new people, making new friends. That can be very hard for both men and women for different reasons. Sometimes women are involved in taking care of the kids and working outside the home, don't really have time. Men might, be very involved in their jobs and just not really have time to develop friendships. So through some of these other activities and having fun and sports or dance class, various kinds of things, you can learn to feel better about yourself. It's also important to know that there are supports available out there for anyone who needs them. Anyone who wants to join a support group, there are a lot of them for people who are separated and going through divorce. And it really does help to talk to other people who are going through the same thing at the same time. You can see a therapist individually and talk out things, at a deeper level if you feel the need to do that. Gaining a lot of information about what you're going through can really be helpful too at this time.
I know one of the bad things about when people are low in their self-esteem, and I've noticed this more in men, is the tendency to drink or to abuse drugs or to spend alone time because they don't seem to have as many friends and they can't talk freely and they're not intimate like women, even if they don't know each other, can sit down on the couch beside each other and just talk. And men can't do that, and I think that it's really hard on them, and I think that we need to pay more attention to the fact that it is hard on them, and we just say, well, men don't cry. You know, I mean, they've been raised like that for years, and that's a shame because if they can't get that emotion out, if they can't get that hurt out, then they can't get into another relationship where they are comfortable or where they're even being a good parent or being a good step-parent because they are carrying so much hurt that our society has kept blocked in them. So I've noticed a lot of self-esteem problems with men during divorce, so we need to work on that. And guys, if you're out there, you need to work on that because it's important to you, it's important to your family, it's important to everyone.
Well, Gina, you've just, as I said, mentioned something that was well said and speaks to a certain part of the population of some men. Because from what I've seen in my work, there are also a lot of women who really just don't know how to communicate honestly and openly with each other. It might look as though women are able to get together and chat and talk about things, but they might not really be able to expose their deeper pain because it's very painful for men and women. And I think that's actually something that people have to learn how to do. First of all, as I've been saying all along, is to face it yourself, to look at what's hurting and why, instead of hiding it. Because the tendency of people is to hide the things that are painful instead of exposing it and realizing that by exposing it, it gets it out in the open, gets it out in the air. It no longer festers anymore. We're talking before about getting out there and meeting people. And if you're meeting people who are divorced and separated, you can start talking to them, about your situation in terms of who you are, what went wrong, what you've learned. But an important thing that I'd really like to warn everyone about is make sure when you meet new people, don't start bashing your ex-spouse. That really isn't productive. It just keeps the anger alive inside of you.
Well, last night I was sitting in the hotel where I was at, and I talked to everyone about this divorce video to get their ideas and what it is that they've personally been through, and I am amazed how often the very first subject came up that my wife did this to me and my husband did this to me, and they start attacking one another right away. And it's really sad because these same people want to build a new relationship. I mean, that's why they may even be talking to me or I may even be talking to them, but it immediately turns you off because if they're attacking someone that they haven't even been married to for the last 5 or 8 years, they've got to get past that, and you can't build a new relationship if you're still attacking or angry at the person who, in this particular case, simply didn't love the man. She was ready to go on her way. He couldn't say anything other than that he always had to take out the trash, and he couldn't say anything else bad about her. And I thought, my goodness, we know lots of people who we could say really bad stuff about, and it's important not to do that because it looks bad for you and it looks bad for them.
Well, it certainly does, and I think the way to stop doing that is to understand why people do it. People do it because they want to have a target. They want to have a reason for what went wrong. And people either feel like, I did something wrong or you did something wrong. And as I've been saying, that really isn't the truth. And when people continue to fuel the fire with anger, it keeps them feeling angry. And that's the way you end up feeling bitter, resentful, lonely. And if you're in another relationship, it's certainly never going to work. When people continue to be angry, it really indicates a real roadblock, that there's no awareness, of who they are. It's really important for people to know that anger continues to destroy them inside.
Margie, some of the innocent victims, some of the people that we have not talked about, we've talked about the husband and the wife and the children, but we haven't talked about the whole family circle. And I have seen so many times, even in my own family, where a daughter-in-law who has gotten a divorce from a family member has refused to let those children be seen by the grandparents. The grandparents are innocent of anything. It's just one more way that she can hurt the family because she's hurting. Is there any way that we can help grandparents or other aunts, uncles, whoever it may be, who was close to child or children in this family that they are now not seeing? Is there any way we can keep the family from breaking up?
Well, the grandparents or aunts and uncles can certainly approach the parents of the child, whichever one is keeping them from seeing them, and to just say they'd still like to be a part of their life. An important thing is for those family members to remain neutral, because it's just as easy for family members to get on that anger bandwagon as it is for the ex-spouses. And that often happens, and then they get pushed away. The other important thing to know, if someone's withholding the grandchildren from the grandparents and trying to get revenge, revenge is only hurting your own children. And that's certainly not the point. And also, you're depriving yourself of getting some support. Grandparents can be a wonderful source of support, you know, caretaking and babysitting. They love the children as much as you do. And it's important to, you know, let your children have that love and not to continue to fuel the anger.
People need to realize that grandparents are far older, and even keeping a grandchild away from them for 2 or 3 years, the grandparent may pass away. That opportunity, I didn't get to know any of my grandparents, and I think that that's such a shame, because those were my grandparents and someone was able to take that away from me. I think people need to be aware of that that's a part of your life, and it's not a right that you should take away from children.
It certainly adds to the loss that children feel. And we want to help children to know that, you know, they can still continue to rebuild their lives despite the loss of their parents living together. They really don't need to go through any more loss. They can still visit family, gain a lot of support, and know that, you know, they are still loved by everyone, because kids know when they're being used as pawns.
Margie, talking about children that are acting up, is there something that we can do to help them and help ourselves?
Well, when kids really are affected by divorce, and they always will be affected by it, the best thing to do is to try to keep their pain, their loss, at a minimum. They're going to certainly have the significant loss of one of the parents not living in the home with them. One thing we really want to avoid is having the child feel as though they're causing extra problems, you know, for the parents. So kids are usually, it's typical to have fights over kids of custody and money. And kids end up feeling guilty. It's really important to try to neutralize that, to let kids know that the mother and father just don't love each other anymore. It has nothing to do with the kids, because kids also are learning from this relationship, from their parents, about marriages. So if they see that when a marriage ends, that the ugliness continues and it gets worse and worse, they're going to feel like divorce caused the problem. In actuality, it's really been proven that kids who coming from families of divorce do quite well once the divorce has taken place, if both of the parents resolve their issues, stop being angry, and move on with their lives. The better parents do, the better the kids will do.
That's important. That's very important. One other thing I wanted to talk about, and that was stability. If one parent remains neutral and doesn't fight, because you're not always in control of what your spouse is going to do. You think you are, but you're not. You are only in control of what it is that you're going to do. So if you can remain neutral and not fight, will the children do better?
They certainly will. And they certainly will begin to see that if the other parent is the one expressing the anger all the time, they'll know that that's the parent who's really unhappy all the time. So they're not going to necessarily believe all the information that that parent is saying. It's certainly better to have one parent who's neutral than neither. It's ideal to have both, but we can't always control that.
What if one parent, in order to keep this flow of anger going, continually feeds misinformation to that child or causes disruptiveness, you know, within the home life? The child visits the mother or father and then goes back to the home, and what can you do about that?
Well, one thing that I often tell parents when they come to see me with those kinds of stories that are infuriating,